All right, good afternoon. Welcome back. We're delighted to be joined by Omar Abdi, who is the Deputy Executive Director of UNICEF, who is here to brief you on the situation in Afghanistan. Omar, welcome, and you have the floor, and then we'll take some questions.
Thank you, Stefan. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, Afghanistan is in a country in deep crisis, and unfortunately, those least responsible, the country's children, are paying the highest price. Even before the Taliban takeover, at least 10 million children across the country were in need of humanitarian assistance to survive. And at least 1 million of these children are at risk of dying due to severe acute malnutrition if they are not treated immediately. The health system and social services are on the verge of collapse. Medical supplies are running dangerously low. We are already seeing an increase of measles and acute watery diarrhea outbreaks. Polio remains a concern. COVID infection is ongoing. I visited the Children's Hospital in Kabul and was shocked to see how packed it was with malnourished children, some of them babies. Teachers and health workers have not been paid, and yet they continue to report to work. And as the Secretary General told you earlier this week, the economic system is on the verge of collapse. The situation is critical, and it will only get worse. We anticipate that the humanitarian needs of children and women will increase over the coming months amidst the severe drought and consequent water scarcity, an uncertain security environment, continued displacement, the devastating socioeconomic consequences of COVID-19 pandemic, and the onset of winter. As I speak to you today, millions of girls of secondary school age are missing out on education for the 27th consecutive day. In my meetings with the de facto authorities, I impressed upon them the need to let girls resume their learning. This is critical for the girls themselves and for the country as a whole. Here I would like to share some statistics about education in Afghanistan. The number of children enrolled in schools increased from 1 million in 2001 to almost 10 million children, including 4 million girls at present. The number of schools tripled from 6,000 to 18,000 in the last decade. Despite this progress, 4.2 million children are out of school, including 2.6 million girls. The education gains of the past 2 decades must be strengthened and not rolled back. Finally, a word about our operations. UNICEF has been in Afghanistan for more than 70 years, providing aid to those most in need. We are scaling up our programs across the country as we gain access to areas that were previously off limits. UNICEF has 13 sub-offices in the country, in addition to the main office in Kabul. We carry out our work according to the humanitarian principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. But we need help to keep schools open and increase enrollment, to sustain the health system, treat malnourished children, and to provide cash to suffering families. We urge donors to maintain their humanitarian and development investments in Afghanistan so that the hard-fought gains over the past decades are not lost. We have put in place mechanisms that facilitate us to implement directly without going through government systems. In a nutshell, UNICEF, the UN, and humanitarian partners are sparing no effort to overcome financial shortfalls, logistical challenges, and an increasingly complex political situation to support the millions of women, men, and children in Afghanistan who depend on humanitarian assistance and protection. The de facto authorities, UN member states, donors, humanitarian organizations, and other stakeholders must mobilize immediately to prevent a further humanitarian catastrophe in Afghanistan. Thank you. I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Edie Lederer, Associated Press.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdi. On behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association, welcome and thank you for doing this briefing. A couple of follow-up questions. When exactly were you in Afghanistan, and what was the reaction of the Taliban officials that you spoke to your appeal on girls' education and other issues? And secondly, is UNICEF seeing differences among the provinces in how it's dealing with children? And if so, what are you doing to try to get a more broader and more universal programs to help them?
Thank you very
Please,
much. I was in Afghanistan last week and met with several authorities of the de facto government. And in all my meetings, the education of girls was the first issue that I raised. I have got affirmations of the commitments that the Taliban made in terms of allowing all girls to go to school. Girls up to grade 6 can go to school now. And only in 5 provinces, to your second question, only in 5 provinces where the girls can go to secondary school. But we are asking that girls everywhere go to school. The de facto Minister of Health, of Education told us that they are working on a framework, which they will announce soon, that will allow all girls to go to secondary school. And we are expecting that to happen very soon. So we are urging them not to wait. Any day that we wait, it's a day lost for those girls that are out of school.
Thank you. James Bays, Al Jazeera.
So first, a little quick follow-up on that. Do you, even if the Taliban were to say all girls could go to school, do you think there might be some reticence from parents worried about the security of their children given this resistance to girls' education? And you also mentioned that you were expanding into parts of Afghanistan that you hadn't been able to go to before. I'm assuming those are previously Taliban-controlled areas that you weren't able to go to. Clearly, some of those are very conservative areas, and in order to access women and children, you need to have women UNICEF staff. Are you able to deploy women UNICEF staff to these areas?
Thank you for those questions. I mean, first, you're right. Even before the current political turmoil, there were only 40% of girls who were going to school. And even if now they're allowed to go to school, of course, we have to overcome those resistance from certain conservative societies in terms of sending girls to secondary school. But I think first allowing them to go to school is the first step. And then we continue working and looking at what are the barriers that keep girls from going to school. Now, interestingly, the authorities that I met said that when they put in place the framework that they are working on, will convince more parents to send their girls to school. So that has to be seen, because they're saying that they will address some of the concerns that certain conservative communities have with regard to girls going to school, such as separating girls and boys, female teachers teaching girls, and not allowing interaction with men in the classroom. In terms of the access, you're right. I mean, we used to work in some parts of Taliban-controlled territories before. But this now allows us to access more territories. Some of our female colleagues are back and working, and we expect all of them to come back to work.
Thank you. Edie, sorry, Edie, you have a follow-up?
Yeah. Couple of follow-ups. When you said 40% of girls are going to school, is that only 40% of girls of an age to go to elementary school are actually in school?
Yeah, that was before the
That was
current
before.
crisis now. Yeah.
Okay, and another follow-up on this framework. Did the Taliban give any indication of when they're planning to publish this? Are they planning to make it mandatory in every province?
They said they would publish within a month, between a month and two. Now, I don't know how will they, whether they will make it mandatory to all provinces or not. We will have to see.
And in the 5 provinces that are allowing girls to go to secondary school, have you received word that that's actually happening?
Yes, it's happening.
Any questions in the offline on video? If you have a question, open your mic. Okay.
Thank you very
Omar,
much.
thank you very much for coming. We're
Good.